I'm Kirsten Burke, and I am joined by Data Endures CTO and Chief Information Security Officer, Shaheen Peruz. Shaheen, welcome.
Hi, everyone.
I don't know about you, but I'm surprised we're here at the end of September, but glad you can join us. We are continuing today the series we started last month about our security FourFecta. We've been talking about why it's so important for organizations to consider certain aspects of their security to make sure that their posture is as strong as it can be. Last month, we talked about EDR, endpoint detection and response. And today, we are going to be talking about anti-phishing protection. Shaheen, why don't you give us a little lead in? I know this was not originally in our FourFecta. We had been for a while talking about a trifecta, but the events of 2020 have really kind of changed the game in terms of phishing. Why don't you talk to us a little bit about that?
Yeah, just as a quick refresher, the FourFecta is our approach to a modern defense in depth. Given that what we've seen a rapid change and increase in is the transformations that people are doing. They're doing digital transformations of their traditional data centers or server rooms and moving quickly to make their applications so that they can be accessed by distributed workers. And the onslaught of this pandemic has basically created something none of us were prepared for, which is going from 10 to 25% of our workers working remote to 100% working remote. And so that distributed edge model, that distributed compute requirement model has created, challenges, exacerbated challenges for protecting those people out in the field. And so our trifecta was DNS defense up front to block known bad URLs. It was EDR right behind that to if somebody were able to click on a bad URL and it didn't get blocked, that your EDR solution would detect it and help you respond to it and shut down any threats. And then the final layer of defense was what we like to prefer, our SOC, but a good security practice in the Security Operations Center. Mm-hmm. And as a result of this distributed world that we find ourselves in today, it really became important to add the fourth layer, which is the first layer actually of our FourFecta, which is the advanced phishing protection. So advanced phishing protection, DNS defense, EDR, and then SOC. And the way we look at it is there's a lot of solutions out there for training your users, security awareness training, phishing training, to help them to become more aware. Every one of us for the last 5 to 10 years has been trying to help our people learn that look at the URL, look at the email address, look at the link. Does it look like it's from Microsoft or does it look like it's from Macrosoft? And so on and so forth. And we've been trying to educate our users to become our defensive tool. And still today, the number one breach factor is insider. And insider, it doesn't have to mean that they're malicious themselves. It means that somebody took advantage of them, and phishing is the perfect way to take advantage of them. So,
well, and particularly when everyone is so far away from IT resources right now, mm-hmm. You kind of lose that in-office communication chain where someone says in the hall, something's going on, I've seen something, and people are a little bit more on their own than they were before to navigate this information coming in.
Absolutely. And the challenge is that, as IT organizations, we don't control their home network in any way. Some lucky IT organizations that had funding and forwithal for, I remember 4 companies ago, we decided to go completely virtual for our headquarters. And when we did that, we basically created a home network within our employees that went remote homes, which was a segment of their network, not the whole network. We still were reliant on their internet connection. We still were reliant on the ability to traverse their local LAN, but we created our own little bastioned area where the work computers lived and so on and so forth, that we can provide support to those users. But we don't always get that kind of advantage. And in today's world, nobody planned for 100% of their people getting that, even if you had it for 25. So now we have to take the FourFecta, and the reason we call it a modern defense in depth is because when you think of defense in depth, You think of the traditional security approaches that we've taken, the security postures that we've adopted over the last 20, 30 years, which are really the concept of a castle, and we have moats, and we have drawbridges, and we have people standing in the turrets waiting to shoot somebody, and that doesn't exist anymore because the castle's empty, and everybody's out in the field. They're working. They're working in the fields, and so we need to figure out how to protect those people who are out in the field. And the best way to do that is to create a distributed, layered security approach. And today's topic is really talking about the advanced phishing, that first layer of defense. And like I was saying, it's the education's great, and we're doing a good job of teaching our people what to look for. And a lot of our people are getting better, but they're not perfect. And all it takes is one mistake. All it takes is one piece of malware to make its way to an endpoint, survive undetected, and then spread internally and cause problems.
Well, there's a reason we kind of call it social engineering, right?
Yeah.
Or the bad guys are so adept at playing off of something that's going on out there, emotion. COVID, we've seen a tremendous spike in phishing because people are anxious and people are looking for information, and they're up against an adversary that's much more savvy than they are, using weapons that they are not familiar with. And so organizations can't rely on humans for this line of defense. We just can't.
And we can't rely on the edge protections that we created in our offices with firewalls and with proxies and so on and so forth, because those don't extend to the home unless you have everybody VPN in, and most of us don't have infrastructure that can support that. Hence, we're seeing this massive spike in zero trust networks becoming exciting. And I agree with the concept of zero trust networks, but it's just another firewall. It's just another VPN. It's just a new name. So we can't get caught in the muck with this concept. It is the right thing for some applications, but the reality is we have to figure out how to treat that bastion host sitting out in the middle of the desert, if you will, as if it was its own castle, and protect them. So this is where we advocate you have to have an advanced phishing protection, not just education. You have to block the phishing threats, the impersonations, the spear phishing attempts. There's some of the most current things that are happening right now is the phishers are trying to impersonate an employee and reach out to finance and say, change my direct deposit bank account, and finance is doing it because they're not seeing that this is not John Smith, it's Jay Smith, and Jay Smith looks fine. Everything I'm pretty sure I know who Jay Smith is. He's right down the hall, or used to be, and so they're getting more and more creative, to Kirsten's point. And so how do we prevent that from ever happening? And what we've done with our advanced phishing protection is created an AI-based integration with Office 365 that looks at the emails, looks at the headers, looks at your address book. And when there is a message that comes in from Jay Smith and there is no Jay Smith in your address book, and it appears to be from your company, that's automatically flagged as no and gets blocked. So your users don't have to be used as the tool to protect you. We use artificial, let's call it a virtual user that is hyper trained on being able to identify these threats. Other things that we used to see a lot of before we deployed this for ourselves was at least once a week, we would get text messages and emails from our CEO to our finance team saying, I'm in this part of the country and I need some funds transferred to this account. And fortunately, before our advanced phishing went into place, our awareness training had helped, and none of those actually got through. But like I said, all it takes is one, and we've effectively given money to somebody unwittingly. So I, for one, prefer not to take the risk that my users are hyper aware 100% of the time. I'd like to account for that. Let's just say that the training is perfect and you're going to get a 1% failure rate. I'd like to plan for that 1% failure rate, because like I said, if that malware comes down and takes hold on a machine, then typically a threat is not detected inside of a network for 6 months. So that adversary now has 6 months to root around your network, and the way they got in was through a phishing attack. So
Right.
this is the most critical of the, even though we didn't have it in our trifecta before, the FourFecta, with the addition of the first layer being advanced phishing protection, is probably one of the most critical pieces. It's the first line of defense. It is the moat, if you will.
Right, right. Well, you talked a little bit about what Data Endure is doing, with AI and kind of adding that layer. Phishing or anti-phishing solutions, let's call them, have been around, what, 20 years. So there's probably not a lot of organizations out there that either aren't aware of them or aren't doing something. Talk to us a little bit about any other changes, or if I'm out there and let's say I already have something in place, what might I not be accounting for? What might I not be thinking about that might be leaving me vulnerable and I don't know it?
So I want to correct that was I couldn't have asked Kirsten for a better lob there for our listening community. Anti-phishing is a fallacy that we have heard about for years. Anti-spam is probably a more accurate way of describing it. Antivirus is an accurate way.
Right.
Those things are pretty easy to find because anti-spam was the notion of anti-spam was we're getting a message that we didn't ask for, and that was pretty clear. It typically, while malware was often hidden in spam, there was always malware hidden. Either it was a link or something, and it was easy to find some of those things. When I say easy, relatively speaking, compared to today, back then it was a big deal. And there was so many anti-spam companies that came and went and did many things to try to improve their platforms. The adversaries became smarter. They started doing picture spam, and so then the anti-spam companies had to figure out how to solve that. But if you think about where we came from a world where we were looking for attachments, and if the attachments didn't meet specifications that we allowed, we would block them.
Right.
Or we would scan with one or more virus engines to make sure that the attachment didn't have a virus in it, and if it did, we blocked it. And that's email security even today. And we're looking for unwanted emails. But what we're not looking for is something that looks legitimate, because it's hard to, when you see a conversation between two people, it's hard to tell that that's an unwanted email. When you see something that looks like a blast email and has no specific target, it's easier to identify that as unwanted. Where advanced phishing protection comes in is it's actually looking at beyond the message headers and attachments. It's not even really trying to worry about attachments. Antivirus covers that. You've probably got some antivirus solution today that is great, Mimecast or Symantec or any number of different products out there that do the job. We do offer that service as well, but it's this specifically, when we say anti-phishing, anti-phishing is preventing the known bad emails from getting to your users. So it's weeding through all of the messages and saying, this message has a link to a URL that is a known bad URL based on this massive threat database that we have, and we're going to stop it. This message is coming from Kirsten to Shaheen, but that particular alias that is being used for Kirsten doesn't exist in the mail system. Therefore, it's not a real mail. It's a spoof. This message is coming from Kurt, our CEO, but it's not coming from his work account. It's coming from his Yahoo account, and he's sending it to finance. That's suspect. We're going to block it. Those are the types of things that most anti-spam and anti-virus solutions don't do. They don't have the advanced intelligence to be able to understand those nuances that I just talked about. And it took security experts to put together that AI to say, these are the types of things, and continue to improve it, and not just stop where we're at, but continue to improve it on a day-by-day basis. So it's a very different game than our traditional, our grandma's antivirus solution, but it is the right thing to do in today's world. Maybe that's not the case. Another 5 years from now, there'll be something new that the hackers come up with because phishing slowed down or spear phishing slowed down.
Right. Well, and I think one of the things that Data Endure is really investing in, just specifically because of that, because of the nature of change and the pace of change, we're really, from customer requests and customer demand, investing a lot in building out managed security services. So instead of these organizations having to go out and buy one tool today and then it doesn't work because now a threat vector has changed, now I got to go do something else, wind up owning all of these tools, of which who knows how many of them are effective. We're really making that investment for them from the R&D standpoint all the way through managing that tool on their behalf. And I think within this FourFecta that we're talking about, a lot of that does parlay into managed services for organizations. You want to talk a little bit about the implications of that for organizations?
Yeah, you're spot on in talking about the nature of tools. There's a chart I often use when I'm speaking with customers that has it's you can't even see the logos; they're small. There's over 3,000 logos on this thing, and it's the security landscape. I've got anti-phishing, anti-virus, anti-spam, endpoint security, firewalls, all these different categories, and in each one there's 20 or 30 logos at least. And there's today about 3,000 security companies out there, and each of those companies has anywhere between 1 and 20 different security products that you can take advantage of. And it's a little bit overwhelming trying to figure out which tools are the right tools. And even for us who are the practitioners in the space, I consider, so I wear two hats. I wear the CTO hat, wherein I own the office of the CTO on technology and direction and product development. And I wear the CISO hat, which is not only managing security for us, but also the CISO for all of our customers. Mm-hmm. And those two hats are in a bit of a conflict, but they're also complementary, because of the office of the CTO is a system integrator that has 37 years of experience that is integrating the best in breed security tools for the managed security provider to be able to take to our customers. So if you don't have if your security team is just the team who's responding and reacting to security and monitoring and being the response side of that factor, you don't have the bandwidth to also be doing the research and development and product analysis and the constant, like my team is exhausted from one POC to the next on technology solutions. We do shootouts constantly between those 3,000 different technologies I talked about. We look at who are the leading players and the up and coming players. And we like generally speaking, in our business, in our enterprise services business, we really like to partner with disruptors. So we have anchors that are companies that have been doing what they do and they're the best in their class. But then we have disruptors that are changing the way that category works. And for security, it's the same thing. Security, we talk about it, cybersecurity, as a single class or practice. But when you think about it, there's so many different layers of security. There's network security, user security, identity management. It's all those things are their own category, if you will. And we look for disruptors in all these categories to integrate into our offerings and platforms that we take to customers. And when product A in category 1 is no longer the best, we replace that on the back end without any cost to our customers, and their security portfolio continues to churn and do what it's supposed to do and find indications of compromise. And they don't have to spend 2 seconds thinking about it. So the implications that you're asking about, Kirsten, are really, in order to do what we do and be able to do it as effectively as we do it, the security team would have to grow to the size of a small company. And that's difficult. It's some companies can afford to do that when they're, multi-billion-dollar company and they have the funds and wherewithal to do it. But for the rest of us, it's really difficult to have the cycles and time and resources to be able to do that, and also have our own business and differentiate our own product from our competitors.
Sure. Well, and you mentioned time, right? And
Yep.
From a cybersecurity perspective, and it's something we say all the time, it's about time. It's all about time. And so if you are an organization that is trying to stand this up on your own and continuously respond, oh, there's something new out there, now I have to adapt to that, what a distraction from your core business. And what is the likelihood that you are really going to be able to be on top of everything that's coming at you? And so from a time factor, and reality is any bit of time that you pull back from that cyber bad guy is to your benefit. So in deploying a managed security service, in theory, you're getting the best time advantage out there.
Well said.
I should get a job in marketing.
You should.
Well, so Shaheen, as we wrap up, what would you advise folks out there? We always kind of ask this question at the end, but it's valid. If people are out there and maybe thinking they've got the right security tools in place, or maybe kind of scratching their head and saying, gosh, I think I do, but I'm not sure. In fact, there's a recent survey out there saying that although people have spent a lot of money on tools, 58% of executives out there are not sure the tools they've purchased are doing the right thing. So what would you recommend as a next step for someone listening to this if they're curious, if they want to make sure, hey, is what I'm doing the right thing?
Before I answer that, I'm going to say that I've been a CISO and CTO for about 20 years. And in that time, I've had to come into organizations and figure out what the security posture and the state of controls was. And it's a challenge. It usually takes 6 months to a year to figure it out, and then you got another year to fix the thing. So, for all you new CISOs out there who are stepping into a new role, I feel your pain and I understand your challenge, and we've specifically built capabilities to help. And so there's two things. So number one, we have a what we call a CISO assessment, which is a paid engagement that allows us to come in and we effectively do purple team activity and do penetration testing inside your network to test all your security controls, your endpoint protection, your firewalls, your password controls, your DLP, and all those things are part of this offering that we bring to the market. And the idea behind it, the reason it was designed was selfishly as a CISO, I want to quickly understand the state of the security controls that I'm taking over. And that's a 2-week engagement, so it's not going to take years of your life away. Again, it's all about time, so we're super aggressive on our timeframes. But the more simpler approach is, as I've mentioned, the final layer of defense, the last line of defense, we consider our SOC. Our SOC offering is, I think, head and shoulders above any other SOC offerings out there. Our customers would attest to that. Many of them came from other SOC offerings, and they were at the end of their ropes, and they effectively said, "I'm not sure that managed SOC is something I'm interested in." And once they got on our service, they said, "We didn't realize everybody else was doing it wrong." And so a little bit of tooting our own horn for that. But the reason I bring that up is we have a complimentary security health check that's part of our SOC. And one of the things we do very uniquely in our SOC is we do a very smaller subset of that CISO assessment every month for our customers. We run 5 attack scenarios inside your network every month and give you a report card on what controls have drifted from a configuration drift perspective, and what remediation steps you ought to take to close that gap. And our security health check is actually also a complementary offering that we have for our customers who are considering coming onto our SOC. And it will quickly tell you the state of vulnerabilities in your environment. It will classify those vulnerabilities by the CVSS scores, and it will do and the complementary version is a small subset, so it's not your full network, but it gives you an idea of our capabilities. And the security control validation is the other side of it, which you'll get the report card that says, here are your security controls that are at risk and what you need to do to fix them. Again, that's a 14-day evaluation, if you will, where we're coming in and we'll deploy it takes about 2 to 4 hours of your team's time to help us set it up. And it runs for 2 weeks, and we meet with you and give you the results at the end of that and walk you through those results. And I think that's a great next step. But if you're a brand new CISO, you just went somewhere, the CISO assessment is something to consider as well.
Fantastic. Well, and we have found over the last 4 or 5 months that security health check has been instrumental for some of these organizations out there. Flip back to the beginning of our conversation where they had to move people fast, they had to move workloads fast, and are now, with things settling in, saying, gosh, did anything I do break anything? Did anything I do open a gap that I don't know about? And so it is a very valuable, easy to deploy, easy to get information health check that can really help somebody know where do we gauge on this, and is there anything we ought to be doing different? Well, with that, Shaheen, thank you for joining us this morning. Thank you to everyone out there. We hope that this quick preview into advanced phishing was helpful for you. Certainly, every time I talk to Shaheen, I get new tidbits of information that are helpful to me. So thank you.